check on the participants. Got it. Participants. Okay, I can't see the list of participants, but we open this up to the, all of our students and oh, there we go. Julia Madison, cool. Okay, so a lot of them are cat colony feeders. So, but we did, Pioneer Paws is probably about 30 students right now. And then we opened it up to the campus and we put flyers all over, but this started in that, thank you everybody for joining. I was on Facebook the other day and watching Tom on Facebook on a live and learned that they were going to do another live the next day. And I thought I would try and arrange it for all of you to be part of that live on Facebook. And we got a hold of Lily and she suggested and offered a tremendous opportunity to actually talk to you privately. So that being said, I'm going to introduce you to Tom because he's got a whole bunch of more important information than I do. Tom, if you could take it over and just start with, how you started and why, and then just get right into it. We'll have the students put their questions in the chat and hopefully at the end we'll have some for you.
Yeah, no dramas. So obviously my name's Tom. I'm the founder of an organization called Breaking the Chains International. And we specialize in rescuing animals from dangerous locations, be it war zones or natural disasters. So hurricanes, earthquakes, you name it, we'll go and we'll do it. So my entire team, we're all ex-military from both the UK and the US. It all got started around about, what are we in now? About 4 years ago. I served in the British Army for 18 years. Did operational tours of Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, many other countries as well. And I was medically discharged with PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder. Obviously, you're all at university, so you're probably well aware of what that is, especially within the veteran community. And I went through a whole host of therapy and different types of sessions, different types of therapy from CBT, EMDR, and none of it really worked for me. And I ended up I was in a really bad place, and I ended up rescuing an ex-military working dog from the British Army named Gypsy. He was blind. And yeah, he saved my life basically. So from that moment on, I started doing a lot of things to help animals, to help dogs, and yeah, any kind of animal really. Started off with a lot of awareness stuff, going after some really bad people that were doing a lot of bad stuff. So certain crime syndicates and stuff like that, and challenging them. And then the war in Ukraine kicked off. So myself and one other, we jumped in, and we've been here ever since. Since we arrived here, we've evacuated tens of thousands of animals from the conflict areas, as well as people. We also support orphanages, maternity hospitals, the elderly living in the conflict areas that are staying behind to look after animals that can't evacuate or won't evacuate. We don't just rescue dogs and cats. We've done lions, bears, horses, donkeys, ponies, goats, sheep, owls, wolves, like you name it. We've pretty much done it. And yeah, it's got its challenges. We've also built our own animal shelter here during that period as well. We've delivered thousands of tons of aid, like food, medication, stuff like that, to animals all across Ukraine and the conflict areas. We've got our own veterinary clinic on site as well. And I've recently just launched an incredible program, which is a rehabilitation program for wounded soldiers. So wounded Ukrainian soldiers, they come to my facility and they get to indulge in the incredible nature of our animals, which obviously helps them with their therapy and their growth and their healing. So that's amazing, but that works twofold, because not only are obviously our animals helping the veterans, but it's also creating animal advocates as well. So in a country in a position that it's in, to have those advocates, especially warriors that are massively for animals, it's a win-win. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah, so like I said, we do all sorts. I mean, I don't know if got any questions on Ukraine, and then we can maybe move on to Turkey and stuff like that, or however you want to do it. It's up to you guys. Like, I'm here to answer anything and everything that you wanna ask.
Anybody have questions so far? Um, I guess, Tom, let's start with Ukraine. As far as I think from what I've learned on your website and your Facebook page, you don't, I mean, you're living in Ukraine, and if, in case everybody isn't aware, he's calling, he's speaking to us from Ukraine right now. And I know you're living in Ukraine now, but you didn't always live in Ukraine, correct? Is it just now, since you started with your efforts in Ukraine and all of these shelters that you're saying and the facilities that you're saying you've built since you started your efforts in Ukraine?
Yeah, so obviously I'm from the UK, so I lived in the UK. But then the needs that great in Ukraine is that constant because of the war and the things that we built, and it's not going to go. It ain't going to calm down anytime sooner. Even after the war, long after it, there's going to be a big need for helping the animals and stuff. So we built the facilities here, so obviously we continue to run them, and we will do for probably many years after the war to help obviously rebuild the situation inside Ukraine for animals, because as we all know, once the war does eventually finish, all of the funding, the efforts are going to go towards obviously rebuilding what obviously the human society has lost. So we need to make sure that we're here to obviously rebuild what the animals have lost and continue to save and help as many as we possibly can. But now, yeah, I'm permanently full-time inside of Ukraine. I've got a question here, so I'm going to answer this. What made you turn to animals when you were suffering yourself? What called you to them? Okay, so what made me turn to so I've always loved dogs. I've always loved dogs. Everything in my life. And especially now that I had the opportunity with my after my PTSD to sit down and actually analyze my life, and every major event that I've had in my life, there's always been a dog by my side. So for every challenge, that major challenge I've ever come across, there's always been a dog there. So it's not just Gypsy, who obviously did what he did for me during my time of need with PTSD, but I had other dogs when I was a child and went through some stuff as a kid. Out on operations, there was always dogs there, obviously providing for myself and my team what dogs do. But here's the thing, like most of you will probably be sitting there thinking, obviously like IED detection dogs, protection dogs, stuff like that, stopping us from standing on IEDs and everything like that. And yeah, they did do that, and it was incredible. But the reality is they brought so much more. So what they did, having a dog as a part of your team, as a part of your platoon with your company, it gave a lot of guys a respite. So when a guy was suffering mentally, we'd ask the handler if the dog can hang out, obviously with the guy who's obviously in a bad place, and the dog would give him that level of comfort. So sleeping on his bed, stuff like that. We'd also be in FOBs, PBs, and we'd adopt strays, and those strays became a part of the family. We took care of them, and they gave the emotional support that animals give every day in every single home that they're within. So it was just one of those things. A friend of mine, we had a conversation. He knows how much I love dogs, and he just said to me, "Look, obviously go get a dog. It'll be a huge thing for you, and it will massively help you." And he was right. It did. Gypsy saved my life. So it was just one of those things. I've always loved dogs. They're truly remarkable, as with cats and every other animal. But I'm biased when it comes to dogs. Like, to me, they're just truly remarkable. Their level of love, compassion, empathy, but also their ability to forgive, and what they bring to society with their forgiveness is a lesson that we could all learn from. And if humanity sat and observed the way that dogs behave and the way that they treat obviously humans, and they started treating each other like that, even just for a day, the world had changed for better for hundreds of years, just from the entire world treating each other as dogs treat humans for a single day. The difference would be astronomical. So I hope that obviously answered your question. It wasn't quite as simple. There you go with that.
So I was wondering if there was a possibility to show a video. I was just trying to check on something about split screening, a share screening, to show one of your videos of your action actually in Ukraine. But I'm not sure how we can do that And if we do, can you take us through, this is a two-part question. Can you take us through a little bit of a day in, what those videos do show with what you went through on a daily basis in the heat of the Ukraine, and what you saw, the devastation you saw, and what your team did and how you extricated those animals and where you brought them. And then the second part is, how did that affect you in your PTSD in going through that again and seeing all the devastations and hearing the bombs and artillery as you were rescuing the animals?
So I'll answer the second part first. It's actually
Okay.
it's actually an easier question. So I joined the British Army when I was 16 years of age. I'm an individual I'm comfortable in the realms of uncomfortable. That's where my comfort is. Where I'm uncomfortable is out in society. So going out in restaurants, like nightclubs, going to big public venues, stuff like that. And basically just living like a normal life. That to me is that's well out of my comfort zone. You stick me in the front lines of a conflict area and stuff like that. That's where I'm comfortable. I'm used to obviously the hard routine, the hard living, the effects of war, and that's where I most feel at home. And that's, to some people, that's a pretty sad place to obviously to be with your life. But fortunately for me and many other animals, my comfort zone allows me to save not just animals but also people. So you've got to live with your life experiences and work with your talents and on obviously your passions and your desires. So to answer your question, in those areas, like I feel 100% comfortable. I'm confident in my abilities and my team's abilities. We have a good understanding of the battlefield and obviously the situations that's going on around us. We're always situationally aware. We can react to anything that happens. Now, the thing that gets us the most is when obviously we see some horrific sights, both on humans but also animals. And for me, I'm used to seeing human devastation, which again is a pretty sorry state to be in. But I'm used to it, so I'm almost not numb to it. Obviously, I empathize massively with it. It does impact me at times, but I move on from it a lot quicker than what I do with animals. So when we lose an animal, or we fail to save an animal, that's when it hits me. That's what really gets me. That's what sets me back with my PTSD, because PTSD there's no cure. You just learn how to live with it, and you learn how to obviously progress through life and minimize your symptoms. So I still get a lot of triggers, but it's mainly when it's due to animals suffering. We rescue a lot of animals from some incredibly dangerous places where there's a lot of destruction, and unfortunately, a lot of the animals that we've got, their owners were killed, which is why we've got them. We'll go in there and there'll be an animal stuck in a collapsed structure or living in a collapsed structure because his owners were killed 12 hours before. Or he'll be stuck in a small forecourt of a house that's been absolutely flattened because his owners are in there and they've been killed. So, yeah, so a lot of the animals that we see, obviously they've lost their families as well, their loved ones. And yeah, so we get them, and that's obviously horrible to see, because when you look at the animal, and 95% of the animals that we get all display high levels of fear aggression. So for those of you that don't know what fear aggression is it doesn't mean the dog's aggressive. What it means is it's reacting out of fear. So the dog's that scared that when we go to rescue a lot of the dog's that fearful and that scared because the bombs, the bangs, its owners have been killed, or whatever the situation is, that when we go to handle the dog or we go to the dog, it lashes out because it's terrified. And they'll press themselves against walls. They'll literally try and squeeze themselves through a wall because they're scared and they don't want us to touch them. So we've obviously got to circumnavigate that, which we do, and then we get the animals back to our shelter, and within 48 hours, they observe us, they see the kind of people that we are, and we give them space, and then we get them back, and they know they're happy, and we start giving them love. But that's because of the trauma that they faced. Obviously, the animals can get PTSD as well. So there's a word within the animal world. It's called negative associations, which basically, in a nutshell, when you translate it across, that is basically PTSD for animals. Because what it is if you have, and people may recognize this, you might have seen it, if you've had a dog that's been beaten by a broomstick, and then you go and rescue that dog, anytime you pick up a broomstick, the dog's going to be terrified because it thinks you're going to beat him with it, because that's what it's been used to. It's got a negative association with that item. And it doesn't have to be a physical object. It can be with people, it can be with sounds, it can be with anything. So animals obviously develop their own PTSD as well. So one of the things that we do massively when we bring a new animal in, every animal goes into quarantine, where it spends around about 4 or 5 weeks in quarantine. So we can't interact with any other animal because we need to make sure it's fully vaccinated. It's free from any parasite-borne diseases, free from any parasites. So it's 100% healthy before it goes into the shelter. But what that allows us to do is it allows us to give a one-to-one basis with one of our team members who will solely be in charge of that animal. So they can then develop a bond, because like I said, it's displaying high levels of fear, aggression. They're terrified. So we teach them to learn to trust one person to start with. Also, it allows that person to appropriately monitor their behavior and see and identify any repeated behavioral issues, so we can then target and obviously rectify those. And then, yeah, we just, and then the animals go into our shelter, they go into a pack and they start loving life again. And once they're sorted with all their quarantines and everything like that, and their titer tests, they can then go to the UK or anywhere in Europe to their loving forever homes, which is phenomenal.
And the areas that you go to, you know, and a lot on your website talk about how you and your team are able to do this because of, you know, into the conflict zones, because of your extensive military experience. It's just, I mean, even the videos don't do it justice as to the dangers that you go through to get to these animals.
Well, it's so the thing is, it's twofold, and the reason why it's like twofold as well is because it's a lot of volunteers get killed in Ukraine because they don't know what they're doing. They have no understanding of the battlefield. They have no understanding of weapon system, weapon ranges, troop movements, and stuff like that. And they can't identify dangers quick enough, so they can stand on mines, UXOs, booby traps. There's all sorts of so many like realms as to what they can obviously land themselves in trouble with. But then also how to react to those in those critical moments, because you haven't got seconds, you've got a split second to react appropriately, or unfortunately, you're another number on a list. But the other thing is as well is what that does is when people are operating in them areas that don't understand what they're doing, they're not just putting themselves at risk, but they're also responsible for the death of civilians and animals within those areas, because they'll just tip up to somebody's house, they'll get out, they'll give them supplies, and then they'll leave. But then 2 minutes later, an artillery round will come on top of that house, because a drone has basically been observing from above. There's thousands of drones in the areas. The Russians have observed the movements of that vehicle. That vehicle's parked outside a civilian's house, and then all of a sudden an artillery round comes in, and you've got deceased people because of somebody not knowing how to operate in those areas. And that happens on a daily basis. It's something that we're constantly fighting, constantly arguing with, to try and educate people. Like, if you don't know what you're doing, either go and learn or just don't do it, because you're not just putting yourself at risk, but you're responsible for the deaths of innocent people and innocent animals. And there's a lot of ways you can mitigate those things, which is obviously what my team does. But it's people, obviously kind-hearted people, you can't knock them because they've got a big heart, they just want to help. But it's like you running into a burning building on 10 stories, you're going to land yourself in trouble if you're not trained in those situations. And the exact same principle, you've got to know your limitations, not just for yourself, but for those that are around and that you're going to be trying to help.
Anybody have any questions right now? Hop in with some questions. Let's move on then to Turkey in your efforts there, because it's not just, I mean, like you said, Ukraine is still ongoing, and it's not even any better than it was in the beginning. And it's just going to always continue to be ongoing. But it's not only the war zones and conflict zones, it's natural disasters like the earthquakes.
Yeah. So Turkey on February 4th, I believe it was, around about 4:30 in the morning, a 7.6 earthquake hit Turkey in the southern region, which borders with Syria. And it was devastating. And the reason why it was devastating was two reasons. One, the magnitude of the earthquake, but because the structures in the south, high-rise buildings, normal houses, had been built inadequately. So that caused entire cities to collapse. And that's not an exaggeration. The city that we worked in, Hatay, 80% of the buildings collapsed. Another 10% of them were leaning, incredibly dangerous, unstable structures. And then you had another 10%, which had a lot of internal damage and superficial damage. So what happened with that at 4:30 in the morning is everybody's in bed, which is another reason why it was so catastrophic, because if it had been during the day, people would have been out of their houses, they'd have been at work, they'd have been wherever, they'd have been awake. When an earthquake hits, especially of that magnitude and buildings start dropping, you've got seconds to get out of it. And unfortunately, there was hundreds of thousands of lives lost. And those that managed to get out of their apartments, obviously, the vast majority of the animals inside these cities were cats living in apartments, living in high rises, because obviously it's a lot more difficult to have a dog in a 25-story high rise if you're on the second to top floor. So the vast majority were cats. Now, obviously, anybody who knows cats, when cats get scared, and the ability cats have is A, they're fast, B, they can hide in the smallest of places, and they don't come out when you call them. They're not like dogs. They're like, they're gone. So there was a lot of cats trapped in collapsed structures, but also trapped inside apartments of unstable structures. So I was actually out in the conflict areas of Ukraine, and around about then at this time, which was about 3:30 in the morning, my time, I was actually driving back, and I must have had about 100 missed calls. And if I get 10 missed calls from the same person, I know something bad's going on somewhere. So 100 missed calls from like loads of different multiple people. My phone was blowing up. So when I got out into an area where I had signal, and obviously all these notifications came through, I made a phone call. I found out what happened. A friend of mine who's actually an animal rescuer in Turkey was one of the people that was constantly ringing me, asked if I could get a team in there. So myself and one other drove straight to the airport. We flew in, and then we spent the first, so we was at the impact zones around about 24 hours after the earthquake had hit. And the amazing thing about animals is they have a higher survival rate than what humans do. An animal trapped inside a collapsed structure, so a dog or a cat, they can generally survive for around about 4 to 6 weeks, because they can scavenge, they can live off minimal water, stuff like that. So 4 to 6 weeks rough survival rate for a dog or a cat. For a human, it's between 5 and 7 days. Now, if you go into a country like Turkey and you try and save animals over humans, especially when there's hundreds of thousands of people trapped and dead, it's not going to happen. So I dedicated my team solely for the first 5 days to rescuing humans and recovering a lot of deceased, which was obviously not very nice. So we spent the first 5-6 days working 24 hours a day. Like we didn't sleep. And I probably spent 22 hours a day in collapsed structures, crawling around and just digging it out and stuff like that. We managed to save some lives, and obviously, like I said, we recovered a lot of deceased as well. And then after that window had elapsed, we then started to rescue animals. So in total, I think it was 133 cats that we rescued from collapsed structures and unstable high rises and stuff like that. Now there's different ways that we can approach it. So sometimes we'll go into a high rise and we'll know that the cat's trapped in a certain apartment, because we get a lot of info from their family. So we'll be able to walk up the stairs. It's not the safest, but we can walk up the stairs, break in the door, search for the cat. Now sometimes you can search an apartment for 7, 8, 9 hours to try and find a cat. Like literally, you've got to look through every nook and cranny within that apartment, sealing off each room. So you basically go into a room, close the door, you search that, you go into the next room, you then leave that, close the door, go into the next room. And you have to be thorough. Like you have to search every single nook and cranny, because you'd be surprised where they can hide. So yeah, so we did 133 like that. Now the issue that we had was because these cats haven't seen anybody since this earthquake hit. They've been locked in these apartments. So, and then all of a sudden you get these guys like booting down the door to come in and like obviously to try and save them. They don't know we're there to save them. They're terrified. And every single one of my team members will tell you, if you've got a if they have a choice between being stuck in a room with an angry cat or a full-grown wolf, they will choose to wrestle the wolf over the cat. Like genuinely, we've done that. We've pinned and wrestled wolves, and like in order to rescue and to save them. But cats are horrific. Like they are horrid when they're angry, because they're like snakes. They can bend everywhere. They can twist everywhere. Their teeth are razor sharp. Their claws are just horrendously sharp. They're so fast, agile. And the thing is you can't use a net. So you can't use a net. You've only got so much time in this building because you're getting a lot of aftershocks as well. So you need to be as quick as possible. So you can't lay out cat traps and stuff like that. We did in open structures, which I'll go into in a minute. So literally your only option is welding gloves, cat gloves. Yeah, they're great, but you can't move with them. And bearing in mind, you've got an entire house that's come down. So the internal walls are down, all the wardrobes are down, the drawers, the kitchens, the cupboards, everything. There's like literally you can't move. So you're moving all this stuff out of the way. And yeah, the best option is get a blanket, throw it over the cat, try and pin it, and hope its teeth don't get inside you. But yeah, 133 angry cats we managed to save, and they were all angry. A lot of scars left on my team from that, but it was obviously massively worth it. Now, where we come in, where we're different to others, is they're the simple rescues. There was certain rescues where, like me personally, I climbed 6 stories on the outside of a high rise that was leaning in order to get up and get into an apartment, because the internal stairwell had collapsed. So your only way to get up is to climb. So we'll climb the outside, we'll climb internal stairwells where the stairs have collapsed. We'll, whatever way we've got to climb, we'll use diggers, we'll use cranes, whatever we can get hold of to get into certain places to obviously to save these poor cats. We only came across 2 dogs. Both dogs were found to save, but there was only 2, so it was massively cat orientated. A couple of parrots, a couple of pigeons. But yeah, Turkey was a very interesting experience, a horrific experience, but we saved a lot of lives, and it was, yeah, it's what we do. So yeah, that was pretty much Turkey.
So guys, he's talking about, you guys are familiar with me telling you about how the feral cats will act this way. Tom is talking about actual people's pets, and they become like this too because of the trauma and the fear and being in the red zone. So they can become just as feral and retreat like that. Tom, how did you know your mission going into these buildings? Were you going in because you just knew that there were pets in there, or did you have family saying, hey, my pet is in there, can you retrieve them? And if that was the case, what was the success rate of reuniting people
Yeah, so
that
what we
survived themselves?
So what we did was we had a team behind the scenes, so people would reach out to us on Instagram. We'd have a team behind the scenes, and what they do is they basically geoplot the addresses, pins, floor, like what floor number, what door number, color door, because obviously like we needed as much information as we possibly could, pictures of the building before it collapsed, so that they had to generate from Google Maps, or any pictures that they had, same details from inside, obviously, the buildings, because unfortunately there's a thing called pancaking. And this is going to sound absolutely absurd to some people, but basically when buildings collapse, generally they don't tip over. What they do is they crush, so they come down. So what you'll end up with 7 or 8 stories of a building compressed into what was 1 story. So you can literally look at it and there's like just layers like pancakes. Where every single thing's collapsed and it's gone down on top of one another. So we needed to like identify, we needed everything possible to be able to identify like what apartment, what building, stuff like that, because it was that badly damaged. And then sometimes we'd have to dig in to the buildings to be able to reach an apartment or an open space. The other good thing about cats is cats are survivors, man, and they can jump from all sorts, they can squeeze through all sorts. So a lot of the times, like we'd be on probably a 10% hit rate. So by that, when I say 10%, is in 10% of the buildings that we searched, we'd find animals. Like the other 90% that managed to get out, and they've managed to obviously like find some form of like escape, which is great, knowing that they're obviously surviving. And then people like you have like street catchers and stuff like that. Our job was the buildings. So we'd go in there, and I remember one particular rescue. We went into a building, and this building was leaning like on about a 45-degree angle, and it was propped up by another building, but it had also split in half. So the bottom half, I think, the second floor, basically first floor had collapsed, pancaked. Top of the second floor was basically snapped in half, and it was just resting on a little pylon. So myself and one other team member, we climbed the forward edge of the building, and we managed to get in to the so-called apartment. And then we got in there and was like literally sliding down, because it was, like I said, the building was leaning. So we came up on the forward edge and was in, and we managed to get two cats. So two of them were stuck in a single room. There was four living in there. Two were stuck in a single room. We searched the entire apartment as we could, but then I called it because the movement on the building was too much. So we got two. We managed to lower them down, all the stories in the crates. We got them out, and then myself and my team member climbed down. So we climbed down, we got down and stood there and looked to the right, and the other two cats were just stood on the street. So we managed to catch those two cats that were stood on the street, got in the vehicle, drove off about 10 seconds, and then we got hit with a secondary shockwave and the building collapsed.
Wow.
So the close calls, that's why you have to be quick in scenarios and situations like that, but also understanding the risk and what you can do if those things start to happen. Now, we recognized minor tremors, which is why we obviously chose to abandon with two cats and leave two potentially in there. And luckily we did, because when we got out, like I said, we managed to quickly grab the other two. They were actually pretty cool, to be fair. They came up to us quite quick. They was hungry, and we managed to just slap them into the crate, close it, got in the vehicle, and within 10 seconds the building was on the ground, because we had another large aftershock.
So there were some people you were able to reunite them after losing everything.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I got divulged on that.
No, that's okay. Me too.
Yeah, so basically, lots. So every animal, every cat that we rescued from inside a building, because obviously we was on a specific mission for a specific cat within certain buildings, we took them to a veterinary team that we worked with. They basically looked after them for 48 to 72 hours, rehydrated them, make sure that obviously any sickness that they had from obviously being stuck in these buildings was stabilized. And then, we got them back to the homes. But what was really incredible was one of the things that we did. And if you look on my Instagram, you'll see the videos. If you scroll down to the turkey area, is we always needed to double check that it was their cat. We got pictures of the cat, the buildings, all that sort of stuff. We rescued the cat, but we also wanted to show the owners that we had their cats. So one of the things we did when we got outside the buildings with the cats was we'd video call the owners. And obviously we'd show them on video, and one of our other guys had filmed that reaction. And if you go onto our Instagram and you have a look and you see those reactions, there's a couple of reels with just the reactions of people from seeing their cats again, was just absolutely phenomenal. The absolute like tears of joy, which was always a secondary bonus for ourselves, because not only we'd saved the animal, but we'd also made someone's day, which was when they'd lost everything in life. And you find the cat. It's brilliant. You can't do that. I remember one particular one. We had there was a cat and lived with a family, and the building had collapsed. The structure had gone down, and it was actually the daughter of the family of her parents reached out to us about it, and both her parents were killed in the earthquake with the cat in the apartment. And we basically got a message, obviously heard about this, and got asked if we could go and look and see if we could get the cat. And yeah, we did. Thankfully, we managed to rescue and save the cat, which was great. But a lot of people don't understand, and people sit and say, "Oh, why do you risk your lives for animals? They're just animals." Well, they don't understand what animals are, for a start, if they're saying that. But secondary to that is it's not just about the animal. The only reward isn't just saving the animal's life. We gave a 19-year-old girl a sense of normality, something left. She'd lost everything. And the one surviving thing from her world before this earthquake, we managed to reunite her with, which is just, that's a gift that you can never purchase. No amount of money can buy that. And for us was truly remarkable.
Wow. Madison, I saw you had your hand up. Was that, you have a question, or you want to come on and ask, or was that a mistake?
Oh, no, no, no. That was intentional. So
Okay, good.
first, I want to say thank you for everything that you do. I know you said that like this is like your calling and everything, but I do want to say thank you because it's amazing. Like, thank you for coming and speaking to us. But I also wanted to ask about, was you said that your first dog was also ex-military, right? The one that you rescued?
Yeah, so I rehomed him from the military. His name was Gypsy, and he had a genetic disease called PRA, which is basically where the retinas die, and that then meant he could no longer serve. So he was at the Defence Animal Centre, waiting to find a home.
Well, my question is that when we were talking about like the cats kind of like fighting back after, like did he experience that or did you have your own personal experience like getting him used to you or getting comfortable with you? Like I was just curious because like, connecting to that.
No, so Gypsy was he was a Springer Spaniel, so he was basically an explosive detection dog. So he had no aggression, no malice in him. He wasn't designed to scrap or fight, and he wasn't actually. So basically, when I say rescue, he was a rehome. So he was a service dog. He was in the army, but then basically his career would come to an end because he was injured, because of his eyesight. He'd lost his eyesight, so it was like kind of like a military shelter, so to speak, where dogs that are retiring or can no longer serve for like medical reasons then go to find homes. So yeah, so I went there, being obviously a service personnel myself. I had a very good friend of mine, the guy who I was telling you about, who recommended I get an animal, has a lot of connections there. So he like rang up and I got the VIP treatment. And I went round, and out of about 200 dogs, I got to choose whichever dog I wanted. And the funny thing is about this is I chose Gypsy for a reason. And the reason why I chose him was because every other dog I saw was amazing. Like some had just failed training, 100% like healthy, but they just didn't have the drive to do the job. Others had like minor injuries, or some were a little bit older, like because you retire military working dogs at like 5, 6, so they're still young. But they were all great. And then when I got towards the end, I heard this thing. I heard a dog barking like right in the bottom corner, and my mate actually turned around and said to me, "Oh, like don't worry about him. That dog is like is not right for you." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Oh, well, he's blind. He needs a lot of like attention, blah 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 blah." And I was like, "All right, let me have a look at him." So I went down and I looked through the kennel doors, and he just sat there and he looked at me with like his eyes that obviously couldn't see. But I looked at him in the eyes, he looked at me, and I just went, "Yeah, I'll take him." And he was they was just like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, I want him." And they was like, "Well, you've got all these really healthy dogs. Like he's a drama case. Like, why do you want him?" And I was like, "Well, I'm in a bad place. He's in a bad place. So why not?" And so yeah, so I took him, and he did the trick. So within 30 seconds of putting him in my car, he's blind. He'd never been in a car that I'd not had to search before. So I got him in there, and Springer Spaniels are incredibly active, incredibly whippy and fast. And he was just on it. He thought he was working. So he's like blind, like bouncing around my car. And it was the first time I'd laughed in about 6, 7 months. Truly like remarkable dog. And the thing is when we talk about like the nature of dogs and their compassion and stuff like that, like Ronnie, my dog, does it now. He's not trained. Gypsy wasn't trained, but I'd wake up in the middle of the night sweating profusely with night terrors, because it was the height of my PTSD, and Gypsy would crawl across to me, and he'd just rest his head on my chest, and he'd put his nose against my face, and he'd just lie there. And that was one of the biggest like medications that I could ever have. And now when it comes to like when you said at the beginning, like obviously about my calling, it's not just my calling saving animals, it's what saves me, and it's what keeps me alive, because I might risk my life to save an animal, but that's because to me it's not a risk. I value their lives more than I actually value mine. I value their lives more than what I value human lives, and that's just because of the purity that they have, and what they bring to the world. And so for me, every time I save an animal, that's the biggest medication that I could have. So they save me. By me doing what I do, it keeps me alive. And when they repay you you go to get a dog that just wanted to rip your face off when you went to save him because it was that scared, and then 2 days later they're lying on your lap, cuddling you, and just giving you all the love in the world. There's no greater gift, no greater gift. So yeah, they help me more than I help them.
Wow, thank you so much. Anybody else have any more questions or comments? They want to say anything?
So one thing I would like to talk about quickly is, what I will say is, when you look at animal rescue and animal welfare now, where things are getting worse. So around the world, in a lot of places, there's more dogs in shelters. There's more neglect cases, more abuse cases, and things are getting a lot worse. And that's, to me, that's mesmerizing. So it's for two reasons. One, people are starting to see the monetary value in animals, so they're getting, especially like dogs and cats, so they're getting overbred. So that's obviously like the primary, obviously the primary reason. That's a big cause for it. And when we actually look at it now, especially when we've got more awareness, more education, we've got more money, more support, and more things like this than ever before. Like, how on earth is it getting worse? How's it not getting better? Like that's the biggest question you need to be asking yourself is how is it not getting better? Why are we getting worse? How is it getting worse? Small pockets like your campus, yeah, that's getting better. And that's fantastic. But as a whole, it's not, it's getting worse. And like I said, there's a monetary value that's come into play. But I'll tell you why the biggest reason why it's getting worse, and it's because humans are getting more involved. There's more selfishness in animal rescue, and more spite and malice, and more bullying and more hatred than in any other thing I've witnessed in my life. And I've been to almost every country in the world. I've been to the worst places in the world. And when you speak to an animal rescue, and this is a question that you need to be asking yourself, is when you speak to an animal rescue and you see an abuse case of individuals abusing dogs, you get people that turn around and they have the comment of, they're evil, they're vile, they should be put down, this, that, and the other. And that's anger, that's hatred. I get it. Like, you're showing anger and aggression towards an individual that's hurting a selfless puppy, or a harmless, like, defenseless puppy, or a harmless defensive cat. And like, it enrages you and it makes you angry, but you're firing all this hate across. And I bet you any money, 97% of the incidents that we see of people abusing and neglecting animals, when you actually truly study and you analyze why it happens for 3 reasons. 1, lack of education. 2, the individuals in those areas are living in poverty, so they're suffering equally. 3, and this is the biggest one, those individuals that are doing things like that on deliberate neglect and abuse of animals, is because they're suffering internally themselves. And if you speak to those individuals and you sat them down in a room and you had a conversation and you backtrack their life, you would see that they have a lot of deep-rooted issues. And unfortunately, that animal is in front of them, and that animal's taking the abuse, and the animal's taking the abuse. Now, the other thing you need to look at as well is, if you see a man beating a puppy, you can probably place a bet on it, and you'll be 98% of the time you'll be right that he's going home and he's doing the same to his wife and to his kids. So what we need to be doing here is, we don't need to just be firing abuse and malice and hatred at these individuals and shoving them in a police cell and locking them away. That's not how it works. That's not how the world turns. We need to be pulling these individuals in. We need to obviously chastise them for the actions that they've done, but we need to help them, because the more that we can help these individuals and show them that they're the errors of their ways by physically healing them and like healing their mental deep-rooted issues, we are going to develop more true advocates for animals. The most powerful people in the world are reformed individuals. Whatever realm you look at it, it doesn't matter. If you've got somebody speaking to a group of drug addicts, about drug addicts reforming themselves. The most powerful speaker is an individual that has been there before and has got through it. And that's the same in anything, whether it's PTSD, it doesn't matter what it is, but the people that can get through that hardship and then correct their lives and continue to make a difference, they're the biggest speakers, and they give us the most power. So the point I'm trying to get at here is, don't fire hatred at everything you see on every bad instance, because there are a lot of people that are suffering, and that's a big cause of why animals take the brunt of it. So when we see these situations, we need to be trying to help and target these things, because what we'll never do is we will never raise the standard of living of animals above that of people. So you go into a poverty area and you look at animal rescues in areas of poverty, they go in, they help the animals. Brilliant. What's that doing? Because you're not going to elevate it above the humans. You need to go in twinfold. You need to go in, you need to bring the standard of humans up so you can bring the standards of the animals up. That's how it works. That's the only way it will ever truly work, is we need to raise them both.
Incredible. Incredible. Thank you so much. You guys, I mean, you know, I've been preaching to you about you guys being the force that's going to make things better. Now you've got another layer and a more deeper insight and education on other ways and other thoughts and how you can do it. And it's up to you guys to take on the reins, and we can give you the education, which I'm so thrilled with you guys as far as how much you've been committing to and listening to and being educated, and just by being here today. And please help me thank Tom for being here and discussing and sharing and educating even more on the spur of the moment, even more than I can even imagine. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions or anything else they want to say? I'm at a loss for words, Tom, to how wonderful this was and how grateful I am for you to speaking to our students and for what you're doing. And everybody go to Breaking the Chains International for the Facebook and Instagram is Breaking the Chains International, correct?
Yeah, it's just breaking the chains.
Okay.
It'll come up on there, but yeah, honestly, no need to thank me for coming here and speaking. The pleasure's been like all mine. Thank you all, obviously, for everything you're doing for the animals, obviously, especially the age that you're at and where you are and what you're doing. A lot of other people will be doing other things, but you're taking the time to obviously show that compassion and to help others that are in need of help. So thank you all for what you're doing, and obviously keep up the good work and keep helping any living being that you possibly can, animals or humans. Those in need are in need. We've got to help who we can.
Thank you. Everybody go to his website to see the videos, you know, that'll give you a little bit more insight on what he was talking about. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, especially for your time. Be safe, Tom.
We will do. Take care. Bye, guys.